to earn your trust and your support. My story is unique, and it's what keeps me humble and grounded, and in who I am. Many of people, my folks in Federal Way already know the story, but I was adopted from Bulgaria. I came here at the age of 8, and I remember growing up in the last orphanage I was in, and I remember getting to the point where I was thinking, gosh, something major was missing in my life, and it was simply having a mom and a father. And after hoping and after countless times where people took me and brought me back to the orphanage and took me and brought me back, the director of the orphanage finally shared with me that I had a family that wanted me. And I was so excited. And I remember the journey of the curiosity of what America was and what everything was. I mean, everything was a nuance to me. And I remember coming into Federal Way in the good old 1992. I don't know what you guys were doing in 1992, but I was just, get to the point where I was curious about everything. And ever since then, since 1992, Federal Way's been my home. Federal Way is the city where I got to discover what it was meant to be loved by your parents, and what it was meant to go to school every single day. That was a complete foreign concept for me, and to live in a family of 4 instead of a family of 30 or 40 or 50. So I've been really fortunate and blessed, and it's the community that I got to learn how to speak English. And so I went to local schools. I went to Adelaide, Lakota, and Decatur High School. And to you, Jesse, I say go Gators. And I always get a reaction from him on that. I know he misses that. And you'll know why in a minute or so. So that being said, I went on to college. And like my opponent said, 2007-8 was a difficult time, and you guys know that. And I just graduated. I graduated from college, and I had a heck of a hard time finding a job. And so public service has always been a passion of mine, and I became an AmeriCorps member in our Federal Way public schools. I worked at my old alma mater, Lakota Middle School, for 2.5 years. And what a blessing that was. So I also got to work as a legislative assistant to State Representative Roger Freeman, and was elected to the City Council in Federal Way. And I've been focused on providing jobs for our community, making sure that we're pushing for apprenticeship opportunities. I led that and worked together with Representative Johnson on that now. And we focused on opportunities is what we did in Federal Way. And today I serve as an executive director of a nonprofit organization. And we've had to make difficult decisions. We've had to also operate our budgets, and we live on a very tight budget, and we had to make difficult decisions. So as we move forward, clearly everybody's been impacted. And this is a time where we all have to come together as Republicans and Democrats and work together to solve the crisis of today. So my top 3 priorities is making sure that we have a good education system that meets the needs of our students. This is such a pivotal and critical time for our kids, especially kids with learning difficulties. Talk about a time where we're forcing our kids to learn in a specific way when we all know that kids learn in different capacities. Also, I want to make sure that we have a thriving community, that we're creating opportunities for businesses. Right now, it is such a scary time for business owners. And if you're a business owner, you know what I'm talking about. But it's also a time where we need to create opportunities, such as skilled labor opportunities and training. It's why I push for apprenticeship opportunities. It's why I'm working on creating a community workforce agreement, because I believe in giving access to our kids and working families. And last, transportation. Look, guys, we have falling bridges in some cases. We've dealt with that a few years ago. We want to make sure we have good connectivity from Pierce to Keene, and making sure that we have good, solid, strong infrastructures. We got to stay on top of that, because I don't want any more disasters to happen. Again, thanks so much for allowing me to be with you and to be a part of this. And it's good to see you again, Terry. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. That's position number 1. We're going to move on to position number 2. Jesse, same question. Give us your background and all of that. And then what are your top legislative priorities over this next term? 5 minutes.
Well, thank you for the opportunity this morning. I first want to acknowledge that we're on Indigenous land, wherever we may be sitting. And To start my story, I just want to first say, Federal Way, the city of Federal Way has been great to me and my family. I moved here when I was 5 years old, and my mother actually served in the military and got a job in contracting over on Joint Lewis McCord. And my dad was a small business owner and started his own general contracting business in the community in Federal Way. Was able to navigate the public school system here. I went to Nautilus, Sacagawea, and as Martin alluded to, Federal Way High School, go Eagles, but I still have love for all the schools. And was able to, grow up being a student athlete, got involved in the community at an early age with my church, really wanted to be a role model for my 3 younger siblings growing up. And this city has always been a city that embraced diversity, embraced community and inclusion, and really appreciated that and really enjoyed growing up in Federal Way. And then I went on to earn my bachelor's in political science and master's in education from the University of Washington. I grew up in a really exciting time in 2008. That was actually the time when former President Barack Obama was running for president. And that kind of inspired me to get involved in politics. The summer after my senior year of high school, I was involved in his campaign, doorbelling, learning the ropes, got involved with the Young Democrats at the University of Washington, and really found a place there. But I always had a passion for education. And so to that end, I ended up working in college and career readiness as a high school counselor for 5 years, starting at Garfield High School in Seattle, and then moving on to Highland High School. In that position, I helped over 5,000 students get access to post-secondary education, get access to the
Lost that one.
I think we lost Jesse. Hold on, Jesse.
Jesse?
to meet with companies. And this is just an exciting time, right now, because we have a new moment. We really have a moment to embrace this new challenge post-COVID with workforce training and development. After serving as a high school counselor, I ended up serving as a family engagement coordinator for a couple of years, and then most recently in workforce planning and development at Highline Public Schools, helping students get into the education field. I also in the past have supported youth organizations as a board member for Young Life here in Federal Way for the Federal Way Youth Action Team. In 2017, I ended up running for Federal Way City Council. I saw an opportunity for representation for young people, for working families, for people of color. And I was able to beat a 2-term incumbent and become the youngest city council member at the age of 27. And on the city council, I put my passion for helping youth and families to work right away, organizing youth forums, youth violence prevention programs, and connecting young people to the trades and apprenticeship. We were able to establish our first ever apprenticeship utilization ordinance for capital projects within the city. Was also able to help support with youth violence prevention programming and youth development programming in the city. And was also able to make sure that we're looking at our budget through a zero-based approach and a zero-based lens. And so I have experience getting through tough challenges with the budget on the city council. I'm also proud to have helped to create the city's first ever senior advisory commission to give seniors a voice around issues, including housing and healthcare. So in January of this year, I had the opportunity to be appointed to serve as state representative for this district. And in a short time, I got to work in Olympia, was able to secure critical funding for COVID-19 amounting to over $200 million for housing and childcare and healthcare. I was able locally to also work on making sure we have a project with the Chamber of Commerce in Federal Way, as well as working directly with Auburn to make sure that we supported the youth shelter in Auburn as well. So was able to do a lot of great projects, partnered with the Port of Seattle to bring our region's first ever maritime high school that will be opening in the year 2023 in partnership with Federal Way, Auburn, and Highline school districts. And so workforce training and development is a huge part of why I'm in this position and why I want to move forward. We need to close opportunity gaps for families, making sure that there's access to the trades and apprenticeships, access to high demand jobs in tech and STEM. We also need to make sure that healthcare, including those that are living on the streets that are homeless, that we have more opportunities there, making sure that we have mental health supports, drug dependency supports, and making sure that people have an option for housing. I'm very much interested in how we can increase economic mobility, as I said. And that's why I've worked to support small businesses as a state representative, as well as most recently helping to solve the unemployment problem that we had over the summer. And
All
public
right.
finally is important. So
I'm
I'll
gonna
stop up there.
interrupt you there. I appreciate that great introduction. Very focused on workforce development. Thank you, Jesse. Rounding out our last candidate running for position number 2, Jack Walsh. Same question, 5 minutes. Introduce yourself. Why are you running, and what are your top legislative priorities?
All right, thank you, Terry, and thank you, the Auburn Area Chamber of Commerce, and also I want to thank Jesse and Jamila and Martin for being on here together. Also, I consider all of them friends. We all want what is best for the community. Our approach to what is best varies. However, we all do want to do what's best for the community. A little bit about myself. I've lived in Federal Way for 35 years. Grew up in a small farming town in southern Nevada. Grew up milking cows and hoeing the garden, and my father was disabled, and we struggled when I was young. A lot of the meals that we had, everything that we had, came from our own garden, and so I know what it's like to struggle and to want to improve yourself and improve the situation for yourself and your family. I feel very strongly because of that, it's important to help everyone develop self-reliance. And that development of self-reliance is very important to me. As I said, I moved here 35 years ago, have a degree in journalism and communications. But here in Federal Way, I raised my 5 children here. All 5 graduated from Decatur High School. Once again, go Gators. But I have 5 children, 7 grandchildren, 2 more on the way that I'm very excited about. Grandkids are the best thing going. 9 years ago, I started a small business here. And with that small business, Sub-Zero Nitrogen Ice Cream, I've had the opportunity to employ more than 100 teenagers, more than 100 high school students. And for most of those, it was the first job that they ever had. And one of the things I feel passionately about is helping young people prepare for their future life, prepare for the job market, prepare for future college, and prepare for being productive members of society. I've had the opportunity to help them develop work ethic, integrity, teamwork, customer service skills, things like that will help them throughout their lives. And I feel very important that we need to do that. I agree that education is obviously one of our very highest priorities. When I've hired these young people, I've told them that I don't expect any of them to retire at Sub-Zero. They're going to be going on to bigger and better things, and to education, degrees, or work in the trades. But I want them to be more prepared for that. And I think that we need to be promoting small business, promoting all businesses, to be able to help young people have jobs and then help provide jobs for all people. Coming from a business background, business is very important to me. And right now the state has challenges, both with taxation and also with regulation. And kind of going on down to one of my priorities is help to reduce regulation for businesses so that we can produce more jobs, produce better wage jobs, and be able to help the economic growth in the community. Kind of back to myself just a little bit. I've been very involved with the community over the years, worked on a lot of campaigns, done a lot of community involved projects. About 16 years ago, I helped the City of Federal Way Parks Department start the Parks Appreciation Day, which has been an annual event. This year it didn't happen, but every other year it has happened, and I've led the volunteer effort for that. And that's been very gratifying. That thousands of hours of work have gone into beautifying our community. Also, I currently serve on the Federal Way Human Services Commission, and that is gratifying, and being able to see that the needs of the community and what needs to be done. I've gained insights to that. I've sat been there with other members of that are speaking to us today. Also volunteering, for example, this morning, I was at the Federal Way Senior Center Food Bank. I volunteer every Monday and Thursday at the food bank. Left early today to come for this forum. But I believe that volunteerism is important, and we need to be promoting volunteerism in the community. The government can answer a lot of needs and can help out a lot, but as individual community members, we need to be stepping up and doing our own part in helping our community. Also, until recently, helped lead a young single adult congregation for our church. One thing that I love about Federal Way and South King County in the 30th district is the diversity that's here. Here in our, I grew up in a small town. There was no diversity there. There was no diversity. And when I came here to Federal Way in our little cul-de-sac, at one time, along with my 5 kids, there were a total of 18 other children in this little cul-de-sac. And among them, there were white kids, there were black kids, there were American Indian kids, there were Asian kids. The next cul-de-sac over there were Hispanic kids, and that diversity I love. And one of the things that I think is important.
I got to stop you there. Hopefully, we can add to that in as we move into the to the question and answer period. That each candidate will have a chance to respond to. So, thank you so much for that. Thank you to all of the candidates for a great start to this candidates forum and introducing who you are. So we're going to move to some questions. We're going to kind of limit it to about 2-minute, answer periods for each of them. And we have about half an hour left. So hopefully we can get through the 3 main questions that we have for. So I'm going to start with Martin this time. I'm going to kind of stagger it a little bit, and we'll go kind of back through. So the first set of questions is really going to focus on the state budget. We know that COVID-19 has impacted us in many, many ways, but it's also impacting the state's projected revenues and the budgets. The last budget forecasting now looks at about a $4.2 billion deficit through 2023. In many ways, and Jamila mentioned this earlier in terms of the Great Recession. In many ways, this is similar, but it's a bigger problem now. And at that particular time, we saw the focus on prioritization of the state's budget as a way of addressing the deficits that we were seeing at that time. So the question, I'm going to start with Martin and we'll go around, is with that looming over Olympia, as a state legislator, what are your budget priorities for the state? And what are your ideas for addressing the budget shortfall in helping us overcome this situation that we are in?
Yeah, I
Martin,
think everybody just froze. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you for that question, Terry. I mean, that's one of many, many important questions that a lot of people are going to be contemplating as we begin the journey of getting closer and closer to January. So I think there's a number of things that needs to happen. First and foremost, we've got to prioritize a budget by protecting our most vulnerable in our community. That is priority number one. People are counting on services now more than ever because of the coronavirus. So we need to do what we can to take down barriers and provide support to our families, our kids, and our seniors as well. Secondly, my answer is we need to give our businesses support, meaningful support, and this is such a critical time to be a business owner. I mean, people have closed their businesses, and I think we need to be really, really thoughtful and how can we support them. Second, one of the things I would do, those are some of the priorities. There's more. But the other things I would work on is, in the city of Federal Way, we have various reserve accounts in various places. And one of the things I'll be advocating for is that we create reserve accounts in other areas of the budget so that we're not straining the rainy day funds. Rainy day funds are good. They're there for a reason, but we need to have several rainy day funds in other various budgets within the state. So that's one thing I'll be looking at to address this issue. But we've got to be careful with our budget. We've got to be careful with the people's tax dollars, and we got to make sure that we're meaningfully supporting people and services during this pivotal time. But we also must look towards the future and be better prepared for the next possible recession. Thank you.
Okay. Jesse, same question. What's your approach on the budget?
It's a great question, and I'm happy to have been there now. It was interesting, the last week of my first session this year is when COVID hit, and we were able to quickly get $200 million bipartisan support from the legislature towards housing, healthcare, unemployment, small business stabilization. So we moved quickly. But now that we're getting beyond this period and looking into hopefully a post-COVID era, again, we can't have an austerity budget. The last thing we want to do is cut social services. We need to make sure we have supports for healthcare, for testing and contact tracing, making sure that even our rural health clinics have the PPEs that they need. And we need to make sure that small business supports and stabilization is there. Rental assistance for folks that obviously we have an eviction moratorium, which is great, but there's still going to be a price tag at the end of that. And so we need to make sure that we have supports for working families and seniors that can't pay rent. And so to that effect, one thing we've noticed over this time that I think is absolutely concerning is that as small businesses, working families have not been able to access cash funding, corporations have had record profits. I just read last week that corporations like Amazon are up 600%, $750 million just over the 3 months in the summertime. And I think that just shows, unfortunately, I mean, it's good in some ways, but in other ways, it shows a really concerning fact about our tax code. We have the most regressive tax code in the country. And I don't believe that working families should be paying upwards of 25 to 50% of their income in taxes, where corporations pay less than 1/10 of 1%. And so I think that we really need to look at a capital gains tax to make sure that our budget is not an austerity budget. We can balance our budget, but it's going to take work. And that's why we have corporations at the table right now as we speak, ready to talk to us and work with us because they understand that we're all in this together and that the consumer depends on how well our state is doing as a budget, and the individual consumer needs to make sure that they're in a healthy enough place financially to be able to invest in our economy. So I really think we need to look at that. I'm against taxes on families, and that's why I voted against utility taxes and sales taxes, but we need to look at fixing our budget so it's not an austerity budget.
Thank you, Jesse. Jack, coming to you with the same question. What's your approach as you enter as a state legislator?
Sure. Thank you for the question. One thing that I think that is important to recognize is that the budget, right, or that there is a deficit from what was the planned spending was. However, if we take a look at the previous biennium, the taxes being collected now are actually more. There's been an increase in taxes from the previous biennium. It's just not near the increase that was expected. And if we're simply roll the budget back to what it was the previous biennium, we can be able to take care of the needs that we have, be able to adjust for inflation, adjust for more people in the state, adjust for some of the needs that are brought about by the COVID situation. And with the use of the rainy day fund, be able to meet these needs. There's not a need for more taxes. I'm very concerned about the idea of a capital gains income tax. A capital gains tax would be very detrimental to the economy of the state. First, as a small business person, and here with the chamber, many of the chamber members are small business people. Much of our retirement is based on, hey, someday selling our businesses and being able to go ahead and retire at that point. With the capital gains tax, that profit that we would be able to make from the sale of the business would be severely taxed. It would be a hardship on small business people. And I think that that discourages people from going into small business. Washington has had a pretty good business community. With the one thing that Jesse mentioned is making sure that Amazon's paying its share and everything. One thing to keep in mind here is that Amazon is creating tens of thousands of jobs here in the state. We do not want to do something that will make it take Boeing's lead and be moving out of the state. The taxes that we would be collecting do not warrant the potential loss of these other businesses and leaving the state. It's essential that the state of Washington remain a business-friendly state, that we do things to attract businesses. That is what will help the economy, help the economic recovery. Seeing Boeing leave with the 787 line is tragic. We cannot see other businesses leave.
Thank you, Jack. All right. Last but not least, Jamila.
Yes, thank you. I think we need to look at what economic sectors have been impacted as we are trying to make some really important decisions. First and foremost, I want to protect vulnerable individuals, working families, and other folks who have fewer resources to help them get through this difficult time. And what has been revealed is that, folks are working from home. There's a new option to work from home from a lot of businesses, but then there are still a lot of industries where that is just not an available option. And in the 30th district, we have a child care desert. And it's been amplified and made even more challenged by the pandemic. So we definitely need to make sure that we're making investments at this time. This is the time to headlong into the challenge, not avoid it for reasons of budget cuts and such. We have to headlong into the challenge to have that workforce challenge addressed. So childcare, making sure that families and individuals have access to rental assistance, and continuing to make sure that our communities, literally public health is safe, like that we have public health resources for individuals and families. As our economy is shifting, how do we support businesses that are trying to adjust to the new models of where folks are working? So if they're not all downtown Seattle, perhaps we have some opportunities in the 30th district to attract new types of businesses and new types of tangential businesses that would be more enticed to work with the folks who are in the South King County region, because it's much closer to their homes. They have access. So I think there's an opportunity for us to look at new possibilities to address some of the budget shortfalls and increase revenue.
All right. Thank you. Great answers all the way around. And that kind of leads us into question number 2 is we know the business community is not the only interest coming down and talking with you as a state legislator. However, we are a big part of the state's success in, businesses pay taxes and we employ people, which then pay taxes and support the success of this state. So what are your top 2 things that you want to support or oppose for the business community next session, and why? We're going to start with Jesse this time. So top 2 items that you want to support or oppose that directly impact the business community next session, and why?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I'll say that we want to make sure that businesses succeed in this state, and it's going to take a workforce that's skilled, that's ready for this new era where we have so much automation and is ready for these new jobs. So it starts with education. And as an educator, that's why I've been working to make sure that our education reflects that, putting apprenticeships and trades into our schools, developing pre-apprenticeship programs. I think that'll help secure our next 50 years of our workforce in this state, because we have so many people retiring out and so many youth that are ready and hungry and ready to go into these jobs. We need to make sure that they're certified, make sure that they have the skill set, and make sure that they're ready for this new moment. So I really think of this as our FDR moment in 2020 to make sure that our skilled workforce is retrained and ready for those jobs. Secondly, I would say is creating more public-private partnerships. We need to be able to do that to make sure we have a healthy community, reining in the cost of healthcare so that people can actually go to work post-COVID. So many people can't even go to work, and investing in public-private partnerships that benefit directly. So when I say that, working like I did with the Port of Seattle, the Seaport Alliance, companies in the maritime industry, even the naval base, to make sure that we have programs that are ready in our community, in the backyard of our community, so that workers can go in and take over those jobs once they become available. And finally, I'll just say, again, going back to the last question, if you're not a millionaire or a billionaire in the state of Washington, you will not be affected. We're talking about helping small businesses, helping workforce development, helping working families. And when we're talking about a capital gains tax, we're talking about millionaires and billionaires when we're looking at the threshold that we're looking at. So again, we're trying to help the worker in this state, and that's what we're going to do.
Thank you. Jack, we'll come to you with that same question. What are your top two items for the business community that you want to work on?
All right. Obviously, I was discussing one of them earlier. Taxes is number one. And number two would be regulations. First, back to taxes. Once again, we need to be very, very careful with taxes. I'm opposed to raising taxes. We can say that it's only the millionaires and billionaires that are going to be affected, but they're the ones that are producing not the hundreds of jobs like a small business like mine is, but tens of thousands of jobs. And we need to keep those jobs here within the state of Washington. And also taxes do definitely affect the small business people like me as well. And so we need to be making sure that we are not disincentivizing businesses from coming to the state and from remaining in the state. That is absolutely critical. With regulations, as a small business person, complying with regulations can be very time consuming and expensive. Obviously, regulations are necessary. We need regulations. Things cannot go totally unregulated. But there's many regulations that were maybe implemented with the best of intentions. However, they've outlived their purposes, that they're not needed anymore. Other regulations may not have been very wise regulations to begin with, but there needs to be a top to bottom review of regulations and see what we can do to weed out the regulations that are no longer needed. And that will help businesses be able to produce more jobs, be able to produce more profits, be able to employ more people. And so those are the two areas. I think that nowhere are regulations stand out more than with the development and building industries. There's challenges with affordable housing, and much of those challenges with affordable housing can be addressed by helping reduce regulations, and that's helps businesses, helps keep down the cost of housing, and that's absolutely critical.
Okay, Camila, you're next.
Okay. Yes. We need to focus on efforts to increase consumer confidence and the consumer's access to their own capital to spend money locally. I mean, at the end of the day, if your income right now in this transition is absorbed by your rent and is absorbed by other basic needs, folks have a hard time going down to their local store to buy food. They have a hard time going down to their store to buy goods and services that they are used to having. And so how do we get people out there and spending locally in particular? I touched on the childcare issue, which I believe is a workforce issue. And then of course, rental assistance does help a particular business sector, which is landlords, and making sure that they're not left holding the bag. Is I believe Jesse had touched on it earlier in this conversation, where there is a difference between an eviction moratorium and being able to actually afford the rent and transition out of this crisis. So, focusing on how the average everyday person can have more access to their income so that they can reinvest in the local economy, I think will help bring more revenue in and help reduce that budget shortfall much quicker. But of course, we do have to look at long-term solutions around our regressive tax system. But we have to do all things at the same time. And some things are just, we have to have the political will right now, especially on rental assistance and childcare to support working families.
Thank you. Martin?
Yes. You know, I appreciate this conversation and listening to all the candidates, and I think there's certainly is wisdom in everything, but I think you know, teeing off with what Jack's saying, he's a business owner, and we're talking to the business community right here, to you guys, and I think first and foremost, there's got to be a more meaningful conversation and balance in Olympia. There has to be that type of an approach. And everything that's happening, while I respect many Democrats, they're plowing through many things, and it's having a side effect. Our businesses are closing, and our businesses are hurting, and it's not helping our business community. If you are a business person that's been greatly impacted, share your story, because I'm pretty certain we've all heard it, and it needs to continue to be illuminated. Listen, the other day yesterday, I sat down with Jim Ross, the owner of Bill and McHale's, and I sat down with JP, a brand new Federal resident that started a business in Federal Way. And we had a conversation about the impact that the government is making on their businesses. So we've got to be thoughtful and careful and sensitive. The second thing I would say is we need to be supporting our families. Look, we got to provide stability. I understand that. We got to balance everything out in terms of supporting our most vulnerable populations. You know, there are many parents that have to work now, and Jamila's right, childcare. That's why the city council, I was really proud to support the efforts of getting more childcare funding with our childcare providers in Federal Way. We need to do more of that, you know, and so we've got to support our families, and we got to provide ample childcare because people are juggling work at home, but also taking care of their kids during their school academic time. And so there has to be a meaningful, balanced, and there needs to compromise needs to take place in Olympia. It can't just be one way highway, and that's what's happening. And I think that's where my frustrations come from. You know, Olympia is the place where beautiful things can happen. Let's come together, let's have the conversations and compromise and get things done for the working people here in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's going to tee us up perfectly for our final question that we're going to start with Jack on, and that's really it comes down to bipartisan versus partisan, and we know as being in the business community in the chamber, we have to partner with many folks to get things done, and that's the greatest way of bring solutions to the table that work for everybody involved. So how will you address this particular aspect of being bipartisan and building partnerships when it comes to working in Olympia, not only just as a legislator representing the 30th district, but also when you're working within the caucus that may be wanting to drive more of a partisan solution versus a bipartisan? So we're going to start with Jack on that one. 2 minutes.
That's a great question. Right now, so much of society is becoming polarized. And there's the idea that if you, recently with my business, Molly Moon's up in Seattle, an ice cream shop up there, posted that they did not want police officers on duty there, that they were not welcome. I posted in my shop that, hey, we back the blue. Police are welcome here. And I was labeled as a racist and a bigot, which is the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, I have my grandchildren are multiracial. I have some of my closest friends are of different races. But there's this idea that if you support one thing, you must oppose another. And in Washington, D.C. and Olympia, and at all levels, and even right here in our community, there's that idea that if you oppose one thing, or if you support one thing, you must oppose another. I think that there can be diversity and unity are not opposites. They can be together. And the same thing goes with the idea of bipartisanship. Some of the things that Jesse and Jamila, their basic philosophies are quite different than mine. But many of the things that they talked about when Jesse was talking about, job development and stuff, absolutely, we need that, and we can work together to create the best. I think that I have some good ideas. Are they perfect? No. I think that some of Jesse's ideas are pretty good. Some of them are not so good, but we can work together and to create the best. And I think that that's very, very important. And we can be friends. With the other three candidates here, with Martin, I've worked closely with him. Jamila worked with her on the Human Services Commission. I've known Jesse for quite a while, and I consider them friends. I think that it's important that we consider people friends. We can oppose different ideas, but we can still be friends. We can be unified, and we can work on coming to solutions that can be mutually satisfactory.
Perfect. Great answer. Jamila?
Yeah, this is an amazing question. I love this question. As a person who has worked in the nonprofit sector, you're constantly addressing issues that come from partisan positions, from nonpartisan positions, from bipartisan positions. And so being able to navigate that is a critical thing. Also, practically speaking, as an attorney, and as a family law attorney specifically, I understand how to find resolution, even when it seems like we are far apart. And so bipartisan agreement is something that is probably more comfortable for me in navigating in collaborations and coordination and public-private partnerships. And from my experience in working with people who are tasked with disagreeing with me. I mean, that is their job. If you're a trial attorney and you have opposing counsel, their job is to disagree with you. And then your job is to find common ground and find ways to come to resolution. Not only do I do that professionally, I have taught children and young adults on conflict resolution and collaboration and community engagement with folks who are very much opposed to you. And it's part of my core values on being able to listen to as many voices as possible. Again, it's an open door, and my hope is that folks really take advantage of the opportunity to come through that door. Let's sit at the table, let's talk about it. I will ask a lot of pointed questions, and I'm expecting folks to ask me pointed questions. And you might see my face furrow like this, because I'm thinking and I'm trying to come up with solutions, and I want to participate actively in the solution making. And it's not about me, it's about our community. And sometimes those ideas come from folks who are on the other end of the spectrum from me. And I respect that. And I think that is an amazing thing of how community builds together.
Perfect. Martin?
Yeah, that is the central theme of my campaign. My campaign is all about putting people over politics. It is not about political parties over politics. Look, here's the thing. People are frustrated. I think it's safe to say that. They're upset. And I understand that. And I think, but at the end of the day, businesses, people, stakeholders, they expect Olympia to get things done. And I think, for me, I've had 7 years of action on the city council where I have advocated for Republicans. I have advocated for Democrats. And if you look at my record, and if anybody argues with my record, I get upset about it because my record shows that I've worked on Democratic ideals and Republican ideals, because I believe in the power of all voices. All voices are so critically important because we can learn from everybody, and I think that's what's missing in Olympia, guys. That's what's missing in Olympia. I think like I said, we have great many lawmakers from the Democrat side to the Republican side, but we have lost our ways of compromising. We have lost our ways of negotiating. There's been many bills and many things that have passed where there wasn't compromise at all. And so, I respect the Democrats that are talking about it, Jamila and Jesse, but I want to see that happen. Do it. Don't just talk about it. And I think that's what we see in Olympia. And I think that's why people get angry and frustrated at Olympia, Our businesses are critically important, and we've got to do everything we can to instill hope in them, and instead of seeing another closed sign on their business because of the decisions that are being made in Olympia. That's the central theme of my message. It is about putting people over politics, and it's about compromising because we can learn from each other. So let's actually do it when we're in Olympia. Thank you so much.
Perfect. All right, Jesse, your final word on this one. You're going to close us out.
Thank you, Terry. I'm really glad that you had this question. One of my favorite themes of the Black National Anthem is lift every voice. And that means that every voice actually has an opportunity to be heard. And one of the things that I'm most proud of in my work in my first session this year in Olympia is that 3 of the 4 bills I passed, actually the co-sponsor on the bill was a Republican. Looking at House Bill 2700, I've worked directly with Representative Chris Corey over in Eastern Washington to provide supports for youth experiencing homelessness and in foster care. Worked directly with Representative Caldeer over in Gig Harbor to address the high cost of dental services and making sure that Medicaid got expanded for more families and students that couldn't go to the dentist. Worked directly with Representative Barkas around the bill to make sure that we had supports for mental health and family counseling for families that were going through difficult times. So 3 of the 4 bills that passed were co-sponsored by Republicans. I've done that work. Even going back to city council, one of the things that actually Martin and I partnered on was going to Sound Transit, a board meeting in downtown Seattle, and making sure that we were testifying so that they weren't going to just railroad the city and put in an operations and maintenance facility when our community was saying no to that theme. So I've done that in the past, and I think I'll continue to do that. But we really need to also make sure that we have commitment to moving our state forward. And that's what I'm all about, is are we prepared to make the type of advancements that we need to do? And I'm having those conversations right now around police reform with all 5 of our police chiefs in the district, having that conversation around economic development, talking with people around the business community, and finally having that conversation around climate change. How do we decrease our carbon footprint without harming jobs? So that's what I've done. That's what I'll continue to do, and I'm excited about it.
All right. Thank you so much for all the candidates sharing their views. Their campaign started over a year ago, most likely, in a hard choice to put themselves in this position. The 30th district is lucky to have 4 great candidates to choose from when they sit down at their ballots. Ballots are being mailed on October 16th. So look for them in the mail and go vote. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So,
Everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.